Alright, we should be live. We're back. We're working on Toph, the first Metalbender. Here she is in case you need a reminder of how she works. And we are at 135 spells, and we need to get her down to 60. So, end of the last stream, we did her board wipe effects to go over all the different ones, so that way we could whittle it down a bit. Because she had like 8 or 9, and we need to get it down to a much more reasonable number. I do like her interactions with board wipes though, because there are a bunch of things that destroy non-lands, so you can effectively keep most of your stuff, or in some cases all of your stuff. There are a couple different ways to turn Toph into either an artifact so that she will make herself a land, or just have her be a land all on her own. So once you can do that, it's basically just the enchantments at that point that we don't have a way to turn them into other stuff. I can turn one of them. Two of them? Two of them at most. If I have a Shia out and all of my creatures are already lands, I can save like 2 enchantments with Liquid Metal Coating and Captain Nebula from Infinity. So, basically save everything. So, wound up keeping a bunch of those, got rid of some of the ones that are a little more iffy on being able to do that. What ones did we ultimately decide on? Right now we have Cataclysm because it wipes out everything. So while it will leave us with less stuff than normal, it will leave us with a lot more stuff than the opponents if we've managed to earthbend onto a bunch of things. Oblivion Stone, Hour of Revelation, Urza Silex, and Perilous Vault. Yeah, the Silex is very similar to Cataclysm in that it's going to leave the opponents with a handful of lands, and us ideally with a handful of lands plus a bunch of other things. We have multiple indestructible lands in our deck, 4 of them to be exact. So when the Silex goes off, there are a handful of lands that we can just keep. Plus, as long as we choose lands that aren't earthbent onto, the other ones will come back that have been hit by earthbending, along with any of the artifacts that we've hit. So we will have a much more robust board state than the opponents will in these scenarios. And then, of course, for the mass board wipes, Vault, Revelation, and O-Stone will actually just leave us with all of our lands and artifacts, and all of our opponents with just their lands. And with enough shenanigans, it'll leave us with a lot more than that, so. Also, if we manage to earthbend onto either the O-Stone or the Vault, we get to keep it. As long as our commander doesn't randomly die. So, that's all of that. We got rid of a bunch of artifact and enchantment hate because we, being white, green, and red, we have a lot of different ways to hate on artifacts and enchantments as targeted removal. So we got rid of a bunch of those just to make room for stuff. Let's see. Maybe I should do our ramp next. Because we do have a bunch of different ramp spells. We might not need all of them. Let's do that. I don't have a ton of ramp in Brawl Toph, but I do have some. It's actually more... I've said this before in a couple of the things. It's actually more land-based than artifact-based. Because the artifacts themselves... Like, you don't want to be metal bending onto your Falwar Stone or your Soul Ring or something if you have other options. Because the other artifacts have much more powerful effects, and also turning them into 2/2 creatures is cutting you off from a mana source if you're going to be attacking and blocking with them. So, on multiple fronts, they don't really help as the target for earthbending. So you really just want ones that are cheap and come into play untapped. So that way you can just use them to ramp with. Like, they're not helping if you put the counters on them most of the time. Obviously, you can put the counters on them so that they survive some of our board wipes. So that way we don't lose a bunch of mana sources. But in some cases, that is true of just putting the counters on our lands to begin with. So. Sit down now. Steve, yes. And Farseek. But yeah, it's not why that is why we are not bothering with a lot of the um mana rocks that we could be running. Alright, yes, Lowe's Cobra, you are technically ramp. Lowe's Cobra almost feels like a payoff card more than anything else because we're generating a lot of landfall with this deck. So we have a lot of lands that can, or a lot of cards that can benefit from putting lands into play. So if we're playing like 3 or 4 lands in a turn because we're casting artifact spells and that's triggering our landfall, or because we have things that double up on our ETB triggers, the fact that we're getting a bunch of mana out of Lotus Cobra, it's still a ramp spell though because it's still just generating mana. So regardless of whether it's doing that as we're nearly comboing off and giving us a ton of mana to keep going, or if it's just, oh hey, we played this on turn 2, turn 3, here's our land, so that way we can make a 4-drop real quick, so that way we can like hit Toph on turn 4 if we really want to. It's still technically ramp, even though it feels more like it's part of the payoff for what our deck is doing. Chromatic Lantern is ramp, even though it is also in here for ulterior motives. It's in here to turn our artifacts that are now lands into actual, functional lands, mana sources. This tracker makes clues. That's not helping. Intervention, hour. I mean, it's helping with lots of other stuff that we're doing, but not with mana production. Let me make that clear before Tireless Tracker's feelings get hurt. Ashaya is a lot less so. Like, Ashaya is in here entirely to stop my creatures from dying to my board wipes, since, then they'll all be lands also. And it also allows them to be earthbent onto. Like, Ashaya is not in here because my creatures will suddenly become mana dorks. I do not care about that at all. We might take advantage of that, but that's not a concern. Mightstone and Weakstone are also not necessarily in here to be ramp. They certainly function as it when they're in play, but they are in here to draw cards or kill a creature and then come back. So I think we leave them off of the ramp list also. We'll take Nisa, however, since she is just a fancier Lotus Cobra. Thousand Moons is not any, like, we can turn it into a land and it will make mana, so therefore it is technically a ramp, in that we can cast it and then flip it and now it's a land. But same reason as some of the other things, it's not in here to make mana, it's in here because when it makes mana, it also makes a giant doomsday creature that's taking advantage of the sheer number of artifacts we have in play, so. Ugin, not technically ramp. Similarly, Gladio, even though he fetches land, he is in here to start giving out +2/+2 and trample to all of our things. Yeah, Badger Mole Cub also ramping, also not in here because of the ramp effect. Same with Kyoshi. Shared roots, however, meets my criteria. Yeah, there's stuff on the list that will technically increase the amount of mana we have available. That is so far from a concern. I might forget they actually make mana half the time. I'm just focus on the other thing that they're doing, or forget that they're ramp in the loosest sense and just go with that. Like Kyoshi is not in here because she'll flip and tap for like 10 mana. She's in here because she will draw me a ton of cards and then earthbend onto one of my permanents. Three wishes, or not three wishes, three visits. Sorry, three wishes is the card from Visions. Up to 11 ramp spells. Yeah, I think I need to cut a ramp spell or two. Force of Vigor. Whisper Sentinel. Alright. So Liquid Metal Torque is cheap enough that the fact that it is ramp is relevant, even though, again, that's not why it's on the list. But I will use it in the early game for that, so... And Tireless Provisioner is in here to make treasures until he's not. Yeah, Tireless Provisioner makes treasures until we have a ton of mana and we're starting to die. Then he starts making food tokens. So... Yeah, Eudora is another one that's not in here because of the mana production. She's in here because if our creature dies and comes back as a face-down forest, and we earthbend onto it and it dies again, it will come back as a face-up whatever it was. So, she's definitely in here for that. The fact that we will get some mana out of that dead creature in the interim is not a high priority. Alright, real quick, like Mirage Tempest, we didn't have actual rampant growth, right? Because we didn't need it. I know it's from Mirage, but in my brain, like Tempest is where I started using rampant growth, so like I kind of missed it in Mirage. So in my brain, it always started in Tempest at first, and then I have to remember that it was a Mirage card first. All right, so what the hell? What did I knock over? I don't see anything, so whatever it was, because you know I thought it was supposed to be there in the first place, so the fact that it fell there, I can't really tell. Alright, there's Soul Ring. Yeah, I'm wondering if we lose like the Felwar Stone and the Shared Roots at this point. Like, I think those are the two easiest ones to get rid of. Could be Steve. Steve is fine. I think Steve is better than Shared Roots, because we can do more with Steve and still get the land out of him. But it might be all three of them. So I think we're going to lose Felwar Stone. Because that's not 100. Like, it's nearly impossible. All of our opponents have to be blue-black for this to not make colored mana we can use. But it's still worse than Arcane Signet, which is guaranteed to make all three colors for us. Chromatic Lantern stays on the list for right now because it lets our artifacts tap for mana. Farseek, Nature's Lore, and 3 visits can all get our Triome and Dual Lands, so all of those are staying. Yeah, I think we get rid of Shared Roots. And yeah, probably Steve too. Sorry, Steve. Okay, you gotta take a break. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Probably cut one more. If I'm cutting one more, it's probably 3 visits. Nature's Lore and Farseek are very similar in being able to get specifically a forest and specifically anything that is typed other than a forest, since we can easily get one of our dual lands or tri-land. So there's no shortage of being able to fix for all of our colors. So at that point, 3 visits is just the most financially expensive one. It's either that or Arcane Signet. And we get rid of Arcane Signet for the reasons I stated before about artifacts, but Arcane Signet always comes in untapped when we're ramping, so that can be a thing in the early game. The fact that it costs 2 immediately rebates you one of that mana, but it doesn't trigger landfall if Toph's not in play, whereas the other ones all do, and we certainly have landfall effects going on, even in the early game, where Toph might not have come down yet. Alright, I've talked myself into losing Arcane Signet out of the two of them. Alright, so get rid of those 4, so... One... 2... 3... and 4. Alright, so 131. That's our mana ramp. Still need to cut like half the cards on the list that are spells. Let's do a quick rundown, see if anything jumps out at me now as something we don't need. Oh, Metalworker is ramp. Do we actually need Metalworker? If I'm being completely honest. Metalworker can tap for an absolute ton of mana in the early game, but it's all colorless, so it's not helping to cast, like, Toph specifically. So we kind of went down so that way our other things can live through a lot of our effects. Yeah, I did gloss over Metalworker. Do I want to keep Metalworker? I guess it's going to depend entirely on the artifact count by the time we're done. So let's grab Metalworker real quick and like copy him and put him down in the other section because he is a ramping spell and that is his purpose. So those here in between Ice Age and um, original Ravnica. Clear that off. Bounce back up here. I'm considering Storage Matrix. Like, it's a fun trick with how our commander works, but ultimately it's not necessary. I do really like it. Like, it amuses me the idea of how it interacts with our commander. Like, we just get to choose lands and untap all of our lands and artifacts still, and by extension, a bunch of our creatures. I imagine there are going to be times where it's awkward for us too, but at the end of the day, I think it's a cute trick that's not actually helping with what we're trying to do, so. Sorry, Storage Matrix. Storage Matrix is one of those type of cards that I love putting in commander decks that I build, just because it's something that most players don't even know exists and have no idea what the game text would be for it, and then we get to use it in what is probably its most ideal circumstance. The more I say that, the more I just want to leave it on the list for right now. I'm gonna wind up cutting it. I know I am. I don't have room. But it amuses me so much to have it on the list. Our shards, Aladmary's Call, Aggravated Assault. Do like Duplicate as one of our main removal spells. Just being able to exile the opponent's creatures. In a way that we can recur. This feels really strong. It could be Arcbound Ravager. He is a decent sacrifice outlet, though. Like, so Zoran Orb gives us life and costs no mana, and Karkland Ironworks gives us mana and is the more expensive sacrifice outlet. Arcbound Ravager is kind of in the middle, where we're getting a constantly growing threat while having a free sacrifice outlet, and being able to, when it dies, move the counters onto one of our other artifact creatures. So it's not just that Arcbound Ravager is a threat, but if they kill him, one of our other things will become a threat. If they board wipe successfully, we'll lose the counters because the things that are coming back won't be there to be a target. Like, there'll be a trigger going on the stack to revive our Earthbent artifacts, and the trigger from Arcbound Ravager will also go on the stack at that time and not have a valid target, and then just get removed from the stack for not having a valid target, and then our artifacts will come back. So there's not really a way to save the counters there unless the Ozolith picks them up, and then the Ozolith has to still be in play in that scenario, which I don't know how it survived. Like, it either died or died and is coming back. But just for, like, targeted removal purposes, at least the Ravager gets to move the counters around afterwards. Also have to be careful about getting rid of too many sacrifice outlets. Like, I don't want all of our sacrifice outlets to be Zoran Orb and Parkland Ironworks. And I'm having trouble remembering what else I put on this list that just lets me straight up sacrifice an artifact or land whenever I want to. So I think Arcbound Ravager has to stay until I'm sure what my other effects are with it. Kiki's good. Top is good in this deck. I can cut Doubling Season most likely. We only make a handful of tokens, and we certainly only make whatchamacallit, like, we make a lot of counters, but we don't necessarily need a 5-drop enchantment to double up on our counters. That does mean that only the other one will even still be on the list. I feel like Doubling Season is going to get cut, but I also feel like it should get cut a lot later once I figured out, like, more of the cards that need to go ahead of it. Prismatic Omen might still be able to go. Either we cut Prismatic Omen or we cut the other one, Chromatic Lantern, and I don't think we cut Chromatic Lantern. Like, I'm already not bothering with the Dryad of the Elysian Grove at all, because that is more vulnerable than either of the other two. Like, the argument for keeping Prismatic Omen um, over Chromatic Lantern is that Prismatic Omen is harder to kill overall, and it's cheaper. The upside to Chromatic Lantern is it itself is a mana rock, and is also doing the same thing. So for one more mana, it immediately rebates 1 mana and then gives you an extra mana every turn after that. Yeah, I think we lose Prismatic Omen. Also, I'm leaning towards cutting Aethersworn Canonist. It is cool how it interacts with some of our opponent's stuff, but I don't think I have room for it. We have to cut over half the cards on the list that aren't lands, so... Yeah, Ruin Ghost is fine. I might wind up cutting it just because we have so much other stuff in here. Do we actually need Kaldatha Forge Master? Like, nothing in our deck is innately a combo. Forge Master at this point is more a utility than a combo enabler. And like it's a toolbox card, so that way we can get whatever artifact is going to most mess up the opponents. Ideally, while being a sacrifice outlet if we need it to be. But I think our other sacrifice outlets are better. And we do have a handful of other tutors that don't require me to sacrifice 3 things. Because if we haven't been metal bending onto stuff successfully up until this point, the Forge Master might not even be, I might be actually losing 3 artifacts to go tutor something, and that seems awful in this deck. Like, we don't have a ton of value artifacts to get rid of for Forge Master, and we do have other ways to tutor things. Yeah, I can see losing the Forge Master, honestly. Yes, hello, sun, coming through the blinders to blind me at just the right angle. Let's fix my posture so that way the blinders have an easier time keeping the sun out of my eyes. I'm thinking Ichor Wellspring. It is a nice little bit of card draw when we need it to be. just a good value card to um, Earthbend onto. Um, I'm also looking at the spine right now as a 7 drop. I don't know. The spine might be better than Meteor Golem overall. The Meteor Golem is a little easier to tutor for if we suddenly need to be able to destroy a permanent, as long as it's not specifically a land. The fact that the spine hits lands though is very helpful, especially in the mirror match when somebody else is also Toph and we need to kill something besides Toph specifically before it gets counters. Yeah, I can see the Ichor Wellspring being a bit too low impact overall. We have other ways to draw cards. We have other artifacts that are better to metal bend onto. I'm thinking Conjurer's Closet. The main reason for cards like Conjurer's Closet is almost every Earthbender is an ETB trigger. So if we can blink them, then we get more Earthbending. So that way we can add it. So that way, we can get more of our artifacts protected, basically, from getting killed or exiled. I'm wondering how much we actually need any of that, though, when I'm thinking about it. So, one of the things about Toph's deck is that she's actually very landfall heavy, more so than just protect. Like, it is nice that we can protect the artifacts and they can like die and come back and get their triggers. Like, that's all stuff the deck can do. But one of the things the deck actually does best is just trigger landfall constantly. So I am wondering if we actually even need the Conjurer's Closet. The thing is, though, that we have artifact creatures with strong comes into play abilities because we can earthbend onto them and have them die and have them come back and re-trigger their abilities. So making them leave and come back is actually a thing for this deck. But we also have the Teleportation Circle and the Nahiri's Resolve that can blink our things. Yeah, I am wondering, like, how much do we even need some of the only triggers on ETB Earthbenders? Hmm. Alright, it's giving me stuff to think about. I do think we can lose the Conjurer's Closet. The only downside is that it's the only one I can actually Earthbend onto, so that way it doesn't die as easily. But the other side of that coin is I don't necessarily need to be blinking stuff, it's just helpful. So I'd rather have the ones like the teleportation circle can blink artifacts to begin with, and so that way I don't need to have animated the thing the way Conjurer's Closet does. And um, then the Nahiri's Resolve can hit basically all of our things that we needed to hit. Yeah, I think we lose the closet. Courser definitely stays. Ugin's Nexus is too fun. Omnath Locus of Rage, yes. Retreat to Ameria, yes. The fact that Retreat to Ameria is, medium without Haru, but absolutely explodes with him is helpful. Like, I do wish the Felidar retreat actually made allies. Like, cat allies instead of just cats, but what are you gonna do? And Harmonicon's good. Intervention, Hour of Revelation, Evolution Sage, Tomic. It's possible I can get rid of some of the 1-1 counter synergy stuff. Like, I don't necessarily need the Ozolith. The thing is, I'm planning to have my 1-1 counter cards leave the battlefield and come back. So, it feels like I'm losing out on value by not having the Ozolith to just pick up all of the counters. But at the same time, it's like, this is just a thing that is happening while the deck is functioning. It's not necessarily a thing that I need. It's also 1 mana, though, and an artifact. So it's very easy for it to come down and be there to pick up the counters, and B, just to get animated and have all the counters that everybody else has been losing this whole time, and just rumble by itself. Hmm. It's probably going to wind up going... Alright, I'm looking at Ancient Green Warden below, and I'm like, I was thinking about cutting the Green Warden, and it's one of the more expensive double up on my triggers cards. The ability to play fetch lands is nice, but I don't have room for all of the ETB double triggers, so I think the most expensive one should go. Is Maskwood Nexus worth running for Haru? It's another way to get infinite triggers with him, as long as, like, the thing is an artifact creature. So it would be a land, it would come into play, it would be an ally, Haru would trigger, we'd be able to put a counter on it, sacrifice it, so we could Meteor Golem like the entire board, or duplicate the entire board. What are my other artifact creatures, though, that can do anything significant? Because obviously we have a lot of artifact creatures. Like, we could get back every other artifact from our graveyard with, like, Junk Diver. So if we've lost a bunch of stuff, we could regrow all of it. Um, hmm. Alright, real quick, we're on Maskwood Nexus. What are the other artifact creatures I can just keep recurring? Metalworker doesn't do anything. Duplicant. Your Retriever is the same as the other one. Arcbound Ravager lets me put infinite 1-1 counters on my other artifact creature at that point. As the 2 counters, the one that it gets naturally and the one that's getting from Haru would keep going on it, and then moving on to the next thing. as I sacrifice them. So if I have a creature that can attack, I can send an infinite power and toughness creature in for damage. What other shenanigans can we do? Like, obviously, if we have any of the landfall things, it doesn't matter what artifact creature it is. We're getting infinite landfall triggers at that point. So maybe that's just good enough. Yeah, maybe that in and of itself is good enough. Like, it doesn't matter what the artifact creature is, as long as it's, as long as something else is piggybacking off of it also. Like, it's not just Haru triggering constantly. For every green we have, we can exile a thing with Haywire Might. I'm just curious, like, what other artifact creatures we have that can do anything by themselves without necessarily needing a fourth card to pull this off. Because, yeah, a lot of them are not actually artifact creatures until they have been earthbent onto. Yep, there's Meteor Golem. Esper Sentinel doesn't really do anything. I mean, I suppose I can reset Esper Sentinel, so that way, after they've decided if they're going to pay, I can sacrifice him and have him come back. And now he's a new copy of himself, so if they want to play another one, they have to pay the extra mana. He'll still only be a 1/1, because when we Earthbend onto him, he'll become a 0/0, so. We are getting infinite 5/3s off of it dying for Titania, so that's neat. Ibu cares when I attack. Surge Conductor is infinite 1/1 counters on my other things. Um, Canoptic Sentinel is infinite exile, like, so slightly better. Meteor Golem at that point. Prywin technically works, so it comes into play. It makes the 2/2. The 2/2 is an ally. It triggers Haru. We put the counters on Pridewin and then sacrifice it. And then it comes back, and so an artifact came back in, so it makes another 2/2, which triggers Haru. So that would go infinite also. Preston works with it, because then we get to exile. We get to keep making illusions and exiling non-land permanents. Yeah, Blaster I don't think works well with it. My creature ETBs, I put a 1/1 counter on my land. I mean, that's just another similar to landfall triggers. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So let's pop up here, get rid of those 6, brings us down to 125, and then let's go to Maskwood Nexus and continue. Restoration stays. Lion Sash is my graveyard hate. Haywire Might's fine. Stone Weakstone's fine. Horn, Resolve, Nisa, Gandalf, One Ring. Alright, so on Arena, I did not have access to things past, like, Junk Diver, so Salvation Engine had a bit more play to it. Also buffs, like, all of my stuff, which is a bit more relevant on Arena Brawl, where you might just kill your opponent from, like, 5 of your creatures, getting a combined extra 10 power and toughness real quick. But this thing does need to attack in order to do its thing. I think I'm fine to just cut it. We have enough ways to get my dead artifacts back anyway. It is nice that it brings it directly into play, but that shouldn't be too much of an issue most of the time. Yeah, Terra Symbiosis is just too strong. Every time I look at it, I'm like, I mean, what am I going to do? It's like, draw 2 cards literally every turn your commander's in play? Yeah, yeah, I am. And if anything else happens on any of the other turns, I get to draw a card also. If anything comes back with a 1/1 counter or randomly picks up a 1/1 counter. But just the fact that as long as my commander's in play, I'm guaranteed to draw 2 cards every turn on my end step is just a bit too much, I think, to pass on. It could legitimately be the Legend of Kyoshi. It draws me so many cards, though, just at the beginning, and then the creature is huge that it makes, but it's still an earthbent creature, so I still get it back when it dies. And all that, so we still get all the other benefits of earthbending, it's just that this one is particularly huge. I wonder if I get rid of the Earth Kingdom General. I think he's the weakest out of all of them. Badgermole ramps me and is like the cheapest one by a mile. Boomy gives me the ability to just kill opponents by getting in those extra combat steps. Although I suppose I don't technically need him either, because he only gives you the 1 extra combat step and he has to deal the damage the first time. Now granted, if he's getting through for damage, chances are all of my land creatures that just got untapped and get to attack again are also getting through for damage somewhere, so. Because I don't need all of the Earthbenders. I could actually see, like, we can get rid of the Earth Kingdom General, definitely. He's more expensive than the other ones, and the life gain is negligible. Drawing 2 cards at the like during each of my end steps is amazing. Gaining 2 life is medium. And there are certainly other ways I can be gaining a lot of extra life here, so. I could see losing Boomy Unleashed. He's more expensive than the other ones. The fact that it's Earthbending 4 and not a smaller number isn't super important to this deck. And he has to get through in order to do the extra combat step trigger, so... Yeah, I've talked myself into it. You don't actually need Boomy. Like, the main purpose of all of the other Earthbending cards is because Toph is once per turn cycle. So, she can grind out a lot of value, but she's also very, very slow by herself. So, we need other cards to get more Earthbending value out of it, and therefore more value off of our commander, because now more of our artifacts are getting the counters on them faster, so that way we can like cast a board wipe and keep like 4 or 5 permanents. Like, there's a part of me that's like, I can lose Legend of Kyoshi. I don't need it. It's a lot of card draw, but it's basically like one big card draw spell and then Earthbending, and then the Hexproof and Trample is really nice when she flips over, but we have like Tomic to keep our opponents from targeting our stuff anyway, and we have other better card draw spells. Yeah, I think she's doing a lot of things really well, but she's not doing any of them as well as our other more focused and cheaper cards. So, although putting X counters on my land based on the number of cards in my hand with the Terra Symbiosis is one of those things that just makes me happy inside. I get to draw cards equal the number of cards that I have after drawing cards equal to the highest power that I had. Yeah, no, this seems amazing. I like where this is going. But yeah, Hard-Headed Teacher is one of our better ones, because that one we just have to cast a spell, and one of our other things gets a counter, and has successfully been Earthbent onto now. Land creatures having double strike. This is another one where it's like, I don't really super care that the lands have double strike. Like, that's not how I'm necessarily winning the game. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to attack you and now my creatures are huge and trample and double strike and you're going to die. This is, I'm going to kill all of your things and draw all of the cards and beat you with my overwhelming, card advantage and board position. So I could see cutting the other one, the Metalbending Master. Oh no, wait, that's the experience one. Greatest Earthbender. Sorry, I saw the X and went, that's based on experience counters, right? And it's like, no, that's the other one up there. Like, maybe I cut Blind Bandit first, even though Blind Bandit is cheaper, and can have huge power. She doesn't have any evasion abilities. The double strike is nice in comparison. Yeah, I might lose like another Earthbender or two, but we're at the hour mark, and I got a late start today, and I go into work early, so to free up a little more of my time to do stuff, I think we're going to call it there. So let's copy Greatest Earthbender. So I had 4 on the list beforehand, so we go get down to 121, and I think we call it there. I was hoping to get to 120, but I don't know which one of the Tophs I want to cut. But I do think we have room to cut some of the Earthbending cards. Because their primary focus needs to be getting Toph there faster. more so than anything else. Like, that's why I'm running the other earthbending creatures, is she is only once on my turn. So trying to get more triggers for her or more earthbending from other sources to help her out is super important. Because otherwise it takes forever to get more than like a card or two that can come back. And while that's, good for value and whatnot, we can, okay, I can earthbend onto my guy and sacrifice him and comes back and kills your permanent. That's neat and all. That takes forever, and we have too many opponents for that to actually be a winning strategy. In that we will have, like, 2 to 3 opponents, most likely. Alright, so that's going to do it for me for right now. So thank you for watching, and I will see you next time. Have a good rest of your day.